So welcome back to Research, Monitoring and Evaluation, a course designed for the ECD group at the diploma level. Remember, in the certificate level is just introduction to research, but the diploma level is a bit advanced. Remember, the guideline I'm using is specifically for ECD syllabus, Kenya ECD syllabus. Other levels, other institutions give different guidelines, so I'll specifically strict to the ECD group. We looked at the categories of research, whereby we spoke about the two main broad types of research. We mentioned about the qualitative and quantitative research in the last lesson, and then we also went to the categories of research. We began with the cross-sectional research, whereby we mentioned that this is research carried out on two specific populations at the same time to understand the different types of variables and the changes that take place in those particular groups. Then we spoke about longitudinal research in the last lesson, where we spoke about it being a research that is across many years. In most cases, at our level, we cannot do a longitudinal research. It's supposed to be done at the scientific level because it requires a lot of time. It includes things like child growth, nutrition, developmental and psychological changes in a child, which can be examined over a long period of time. We also looked at naturalistic research, where I'll begin from. Naturalistic research, which comes from the word nature or natural. And this is an experimental research where the data is collected under natural condition. A researcher makes the events happen in a natural condition and then collects this particular informational data. So in this particular research, the researcher is basically in the field or in the area of study. He may be discussing or researching about child growth and development in children, and you're doing something around play or psychomotor development. In a naturalistic research, you go to the field where this child is, or the environment where the child is, and in essence collect data from that particular setting. You observe these children in the field. You observe as they go around their play, and you do collect your data in that particular setting. Then you have basic research. So in basic research, it's also known as fundamental research. It focuses on important structures and processes. Basic research is conducted to attain certain scientific knowledge. It focuses on to refine or expand a particular theory or theories that are already in the field. So basic research is just to help us understand what is already established. For example, you may know that children's ability to attain knowledge cognitively, psychomotor abilities, acquire certain things like perspective of speech, words, etc. You may realize that between particular ages, they acquire particular number of words. For example, they speak about 4 to 5 years. The child is able to acquire up to 10,000 words and verbs, vowels, depending on the different languages. But in basic research, you can be able to check, can this child be able to acquire different languages? For example, you're teaching 3 foreign languages and 2 native languages, and still be able to acquire the same number of words. But this is just an example because it varies from language to another. So in basic research, it goes to confirm an already existing theory. Then you have experimental research. In experimental research, it's basically done by scientists or specialists, whereby the parameters of the population sample is tested in a lab or thereabout. So in experimental, it means to manipulate an independent variable to determine the effects on the dependent variable. Remember, we last time spoke about the independent and the dependent. We have other variables, control variable. There are several other variables, but at our level, we basically discuss about these two particular variables. So the dependent variable is the variable which does not change. It is a fixed variable. In our case, we speak about variables such as time, such as months, weeks. Those are independent, they don't change. Week 1 has just got week 1, 7 days. Week 2, 7 days, like that. So that's an independent variable. Dependent is something which changes, it's a constant parameter which keeps on changing depending on what is happening. It can be climatic, it can be a factor which comes from the natural environment. For example, rainfall changes between months of the year. So the rainfall is a dependent factor of the independent, which is weeks, which influences something like the growth or production of crops, for example. Equally, these variables can be put in a particular setting, and once they put that, we call that an experimental research. Again, it's mostly done in a scientific setting, whereby we do not necessarily have to go into the details. Then you have historical research. So in historical research, you're speaking about a study that requires collection of data from archives or from documents which have been preserved over some time. We are looking at an example of the foundation and historical development of ECD schools in Kenya, for example. We speak about the first school, ECD school, being called the King's School, where Nairobi School is currently, where we had the first formal ECD school. Then others came up later. Such information is what we call historical research. It helps a researcher to know the developments that have been going on over some period of time. It also helps us to be able to refer the changes which have taken place, and it can also inform us of the future trends of things. For example, right now we are having the COVID disease, the COVID virus, coronavirus, which is said that it comes after 100 years. We had the Spanish flu. You have other viruses which have been there, the SARS virus and other viruses from Asia and the Middle East, and even Ebola virus in the Great Lakes area. We can look at the trends which such like things happened, or the trends which took place over those particular periods, what happened in those particular viruses, and we study them, and they can also influence or inform us on what is going to currently happen and how we can adapt to the current or future occurrences. So historical sources of historical research include eyewitness. We can get it from reports, we can get it from original documents, we can get it from personal experiences of people who lived in a particular period of time. So that is basically the remaining types of categories of research. We'll go to general methods of research, general research methods in psychology. So we're talking about general research methods in psychology of education. So general research methods in psychology of education or in human learning. So we are talking about the first, how can we conduct basic research? That's what you're talking about. So the first one is through what you call a case study. A case study. So a case study is a method of research that aims at collecting data from a single subject, group, or a phenomenon. The method of data collection is through observation with the purpose to probe deeply or intensively analyze the unit of study. So the purpose of the case study is, the primary purpose of a case study is to determine the factors and relationships among the various variables under study. So in this particular one, a case study, in essence, we narrow down to a particular unit or area of study. Remember, for the diploma class, you've got to understand that You will not study a very big population or a wide population. And that is why in your title, you must summarize your title to a case study or an area. The smaller the case study, the better. But again, you've got to hit a particular population for that particular case study to be viable. The population again has to be viable. The people to be interviewed or the subjects where you get the information from must be enough to make it a viable study. But you cannot have a scope, a big area of study. It makes it very difficult for you to collect data, and again, the chances of increasing the error margins become high when you have a very big scope. So for example, most of us who are doing studies around Nairobi, I'm encouraging you to go to your sub-county or your small administrative unit, whereby you use the schools of the population around there. You cannot do, for example, a case study of the whole of Nairobi or Rift Valley Province, etc. Even at the very highest levels, at PhD, they do discourage a very big scope because it makes, it increases the error of study. But again, the studies, they differ from one end to another. Then we have what we call the action research. The action research. So action research, this type of research is usually carried out to solve specific problems. For example, issues like shortage of water, forms of teaching methodology in a particular school or setting. So in essence, the main purpose of action research is to solve a particular specific problem at a particular time. That's why it's called action. You need to be in touch with the problem and come up with the solution at that particular given time. So depending on the problem which arises at a particular time or a particular end, you need to act. And when you act to find a particular solution, we call that an action research. Then in action research, we've got the observation methods. So this is one of the main key ways. We look at it again when you're looking at collection of data. But the two principles of observation is participant observation and non-participant observation, whereby you're able to observe a particular phenomenon, a particular changes occurring in a particular area, and then you collect that data. So here we have the direct observation and the non-direct observation. In the direct observation, the participant or the researcher is supposed to be involved in this particular collection of data, irrespective of if they know what is happening or not. For example, in this direct observation, you'll be involved in the activity taking place. For example, if a child, they are playing in the field, they are basically involved in some game or something, you actually are involved in that particular game so that you can be a participant and you can be able to collect the data. In the non-direct observation, you do not necessarily get involved directly with this particular data collection, and hence you are not one of the subjects of this particular data. In the next class, we'll continue the survey method. Survey as a general research